Anyone else out there grow up with an 8-foot crucifix looking down on them from the stairwell? So when you'd come in at 11 o'clock at night after a couple of beers when you're 14 or 15, you know, you'd go upstairs and you'd look at him first, and then you'd have to go past the home breathalyzer test, you know?
Yeah.
You had to go in and kiss your mom goodnight on the forehead, right?
Exactly.
So the breathalyzer, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi there, my name is Matt Stanton. I've got 11 brothers and sisters: Tommy, Luke, Matthew, Kathy, Billy, Paul, Mark, John, Joseph, Anne-Brie, and Michael. I went through my childhood being an altar boy, going to the Christian nuns for grammar school, the Christian brothers for high school, and then I had the Jesuits in Boston College. I graduated in 1982 with a degree in political science, but fell into the hotel business. I couldn't push organized religion away quickly enough. I was a hotel general manager. I was working 80 to 90 hours a week trying to get ahead, thinking that the more money I made, the more successful I'd be. So in 1996, when my daughter was 6 years old, my ex had remarried, and she and her husband had an opportunity. His work called him down to Atlanta, Georgia, and I could have gone through the legal process and fought that in court. I actually said, move and I'll find a job. 2 weeks later, I was moving to Atlanta, leaving family, friends, everything I knew, just to be near my daughter. The only time I went to church was when I did my annual trek up to Boston to see my family. My youngest brother, Father Tom, is a priest, and whenever I would go up to Boston, I would go to church to watch my brother. It wasn't really about my relationship about the Lord, it was to go. I would soak in the Mass, and my brother always gave a great message, but it wasn't anything that was going to draw me to find a church when I got back down there. God was still the judge, God on high, and his son Jesus was looking down at me from the cross. There wasn't a relationship there that wasn't anything other than he's going to be judgmental of who I am. I know how many things I've ticked off on the 10 Commandments that I've done wrong, and I choose not to think about him judging me. I'm just going to live. If at the end of my life I can have more things in the plus column than in the minus column, I might squeak in, I'd say by the thinnest of hairs, but I don't have hair. So when I was 42 years old, I moved to Richmond. I went on this date on Friday night, had a nice time, and I called her Saturday to say thank you. And she said, would you like to grab brunch on Sunday after church? And this guy that doesn't go to church, who thought she was a nice girl, said, well, how would you like company at church? Since I started coming to church, I signed up to go on a missions trip. I did it for the wrong reason. I did it to impress the girl that I was in and out of this relationship with, thinking this will show her how dedicated I am to Christ. It was about 110 degrees. One of the locals passed out after we had been working for an hour. And so they said, take breaks and go inside. And I went inside. And Russ McDowell asked me to put a pair of shoes on a little girl that had wandered in from outside. She had never had shoes before. And I took off my do-rag and I put some water on. I wiped off her feet. And I went through the rest of the week trying to serve people. And over the course of that week of the missions trip, whether it was washing the young girl's feet or whether it was all of the things that went on that week with the different people that I met and had conversations with that were just so warm and welcoming, when that happened, I changed. I came off that trip and we had a team dinner and we looked at the pictures, and there was that picture that someone handed. And the picture was this little girl and me on my knees. And I could hear Jesus say, wash feet. That's it. So I'm back from the missions trip. I was a hotel general manager thinking I'm supposed to be doing big, important things. When I came back, I was out of a job. And I started looking for new jobs in the hotel industry. And God was closing doors. And I started volunteering at church, helping with the yard sale. And then they were shorthanded in maintenance, so I started volunteering on Saturdays. And the more I was doing that, the better God was at closing the other doors. And then church asked me if I would work for the church. And here I'm thinking I'm supposed to be doing things where I have a staff of 100 that report to me. And God is closing those doors and changing my heart. The building's open 7 days a week, and there are so many events. And I spent my first couple of years getting upset that they got involved but left their coffee cup on the floor. it drove me crazy. At one point, there was a trash can and no one would use it. And I eventually took pieces of paper and a ruler and I measured out and I put trash 6 feet this way and a foot to the right, trash 5 feet this way, all the way across, and then an arrow pointing down to the trash can. I spent time in the senior pastor's office after that with a conversation kind of about my idea of who I was serving. And he said at the time, "Are you serving them or are you serving God?" And it was like a light went off for me. Because if I'm serving God, if I have an audience of one, then the rest of the world becomes a blur and you just serve them. It took me coming into this loving relationship with Jesus. The red lettering, when you read that and you see Jesus and his relationship, and he talks about his relationship with his Father, through thick and thin with his Father, through his death and resurrection with his Father. That idea that a father could give up a child, I couldn't give up my daughter. I love my daughter more than infinity. The fact that God can love her more than I do is astounding to me. The fact that Jesus loves me enough to go through what he went through, his death and his resurrection, for me, a sinner. It's kind of like Groundhog Day, the movie. You get a new chance every single day through his grace to show his love. 2.5 years ago, I was asked if I'd start a thrift store for our church as a way to raise funds for missions. I have worked with all volunteers for the last 3 years, which is humbling and aggravating and incredibly beautiful all at the same time. Our prayer at the beginning of the day every day is that Jesus would use us as a reflection of his love. That's our goal. The best way we communicate with people is by showing Christ's love. I'm Matt Stanton, and Jesus isn't just the guy that's nailed to the cross.